crazy now, they will go full Armageddon meltdown.
Let me be very, very clear. There will be no mass deportations.
You don't get to just yell out questions. We're going to raise our hand like big boys and girls.
For us to have tax reform done by August is a very aggressive position, and we're going to get it done.
President Trump goes up to a par 3, looks at the three of us and says, you realize, of course, I'm the richest golfer in the world. Then gets a hole-in-one.
And I actually said I was the best golfer of all the rich people. To be exact.
In Washington, D.C., the upper right-hand light at the White House. That's the kitchen. So breakfast is going to be served shortly, Mr. President.
Is that right? They're up. They're ready to go this morning. It's a big day today for the White House.
Big day for us. Look who's on the couch.
Well, no. We're just happy to be
We're happy to be with you, Steve. You got to keep us in line today.
I thought it was hilarious yesterday where that last soundbite in the open montage where you've got Jeffrey Immelt, the guy who runs GE, talks about the time that Donald Trump and he went golfing and he said, you know, I'm the best of the rich guys, and then he hits a hole-in-one.
Of course.
Really? To be a great golfer and rich? Oh,
that's not
that is the American dream, huh?
I'm neither.
Yeah.
Neither.
Who is? Meanwhile, President Trump is set to take the CPAC stage just a couple of hours from right now. He is the first American president to do that since back in the day when Ronald Reagan came to town.
That's right. His speech follows a big first day with headliner Vice President Mike Pence firing up the crowd.
Our own Griff Jenkins live from CPAC in National Harbor, Maryland. Griff, good morning.
Hey guys, good morning. I am just outside the Secret Service doing a sweep in there, but outside there are literally thousands of young people here waiting to get in to hear that historic speech. You know, CPAC draws a lot of young people, very important. And you mentioned that Reagan speech. Now, the famous line from that is, you dance with the one that brung you. Well, we'll see what President Trump has to say about all that. But last night, Vice President Mike Pence firing up the crowd, talking about the team he has assembled. Take a listen.
Folks, this is the A-team. President Trump has assembled the strongest conservative cabinet in my lifetime, bar none. With this team, we as conservatives have an opportunity that only comes around every few generations.
Folks will tell you here that what happened last night was a symbolic speech with Vice President Pence because it brought together factions of the populist part of the Republican Party and the establishment. We'll see what President Trump has to say, but Vice President Pence had a little more to talk about the people last night. Take a listen.
This is not a government of the elites, by the media, or for the establishment. What November 8th showed, even if they didn't listen, is that this is still government of the people, by the people, and for the people.
And much has been made about keeping promises after this historic speech by President Trump. He will head back to the White House and sign an executive order on regulatory reform for federal agencies. We don't have a lot of details, but it's certainly an issue that matters to the conservatives here at CPAC. Guys?
You're right about that. All right, Griff, thank you very much.
Thank you, Griff. A lot of young people always that turn out at CPAC, and so many really excited this time. They feel like this is their time, and this is really speaking to their generation.
You can feel it, a ton of energy in that room. You know, 36, 37 days into a presidency, you're into the knife fighting, into the weeds. To step back with your friends and say, we got here, we've got this amazing cabinet, we've got this amazing moment, let's fight. I think it's a shot in the arm for folks.
Absolutely. And, you know, it's ironic because Donald Trump, the President of the United States, is going to be coming and talking in about 4 hours. But it wasn't that long ago where CPAC almost denied him the opportunity to speak because they were worried he's just going to come out and talk about himself. Kellyanne Conway yesterday at CPAC said that this group at CPAC will so embrace the president, Donald Trump, they might actually start calling it TPAC.
Wasn't it 2015 when our own Sean Hannity interviewed Donald Trump then and even asked about 2016, and that's when he said, yeah, I'm actually really considering making a run for it. So a lot of interesting history with CPAC. But you mentioned, you know, the big talk yesterday was, this is our time, we won this election, but the vice president last night really also gave a warning of, like, we've got work to do. You know, he said, we cannot blow this time. He said, yes, we won that election, but we've got to keep fighting hard.
You've got only a few moments in time when you have an opportunity to a special moment, a special opportunity to reverse so many of the ways in which this country has gone in the wrong direction. It was interesting, Steve. I know there were two people on that stage that people were waiting to see together.
Right. It was the odd couple, because if you read the press, particularly the big mainstream media newspapers, supposedly Reince Priebus and Steve Bannon, the chief strategist, do not get along. And yet, here they came out for a panel. There you can see them right there, along with Matt Schlapp, the guy who runs CPAC. And they sat down and they talked a little bit about how they were different, but they got along. And Steve Bannon, who this was pretty much his first appearance in public.
He's like the mysterious man in the White House,
He's
right?
a man of mystery, exactly. People hadn't really heard him talk since the election. Well, here he is laying out how the President of the United States is going to keep his campaign promises, and he's broken them down into three big buckets.
If you look at the lines of work, I kind of break it out into three verticals or three buckets. The first is kind of national security and sovereignty, and that's your intelligence, the Defense Department, Homeland Security. The second line of work is what I refer to as economic nationalism, and that is Wilbur Ross at Commerce, Steve Mnuchin at Treasury, Lighthizer at Trade, Peter Navarro, Stephen Miller, these people that are rethinking how we're going to reconstruct our trade arrangements around the world. The third, broadly, line of work is what is deconstruction of the administrative state.
That is really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, all three of those.
You got a flow chart.
Simple, straightforward, national security, economic national, and deconstruction of the administrative state, which, of course, the failing New York Times is going insane about today. It's this idea that, what are they going to do? Pick apart, destroy, undermine the federal government? No, there's been this sense forever that there's a fourth branch of government, a permanent bureaucracy that works against the people and freedom. They're saying, hey, let's let the government work and strip a lot of that stuff away. It's a very important, strong point.
Yeah, that was probably my favorite part of yesterday, seeing those two on stage together. For one, you realize they do like each other. At one point, Reince Priebus was making fun of a Bannon wearing 7 collars. Apparently, that's a thing. No matter what the weather is, he's always wearing 7 collars. But you also can understand what Steve Bannon's role is, because as we were talking about for a while, he's been sort of this mystery man. What is his role? Why is he so close to President Trump? And in this moment yesterday, you could understand that. I mean, you could tell that he is really the brains, the policy behind it. At one point, he turned to the audience in a very much a Donald Trump style, and he said, we need your back, have our back, and also make sure that you hold us accountable. Make sure that we follow through with our promises. And Charles Krauthammer, he spoke last night about Steve Bannon, why he is the brains of the operation. Here's what he said.
I think they're trying to bat down these stories in the press, in the opposition, the mainstream media, that there's this terrible conflict going on all the time. So I think they felt that was the first order of business. I think it's somewhat trivial because it was a very substantive exchange. And from Bannon, whom we have not heard from since the swearing in, it was extremely revealing. This is the brains of the operation. This is the guy who thinks strategically in large categories. And he laid them out. I thought that was the most interesting part. And unfortunately, it got the least amount of coverage.
Yeah, until this morning when we ran both for you back to back. What's interesting about Steve Bannon is when he was running Breitbart, essentially he was banished from CPAC. And so down the road at another hotel, he had a gathering called the Uninvited.
Right,
exactly.
Right. Remember that. The split was real. I mean, the fact that everyone is in that same room, and Bannon spoke to it. This is a coalition of people that have maybe a few shades of differences, but believe in America and put America first. He spoke to that because just a couple of years ago, Steve, you're right, there were alternate events and different camps and people disinvited. Not what's happening.
He was also really, really tough on the media because he was asked, do you think that the coverage is going to get better? He goes, actually, no. I think it will probably get worse because the more that we do, the more angry the liberals are going to be and the more upset a lot of the mainstream media is going to be. So he said, don't hold your breath. Prepare for a fight is what he was saying.
The opposition party. Meanwhile, Ted Cruz was also at CPAC, and he said he got tongues wagging when he
made some news.
He did when he said, you know what? We're bracing for this Supreme Court battle over Gorsuch. But you know what? There's something else coming down the pike. He made the comment at CPAC. He also said this in a special tape last night on Special Report with Bret Baier. Listen to this.
Most of my professional career has been as a Supreme Court litigator, and I know the court well. I think the odds are very good we'll see a vacancy this summer. If not this summer, next summer. The next vacancy, which is going to be the opportunity to shift the course of this court, to put a 5-justice majority of constitutionalists on the court, that's going to be Armageddon. And we need to be prepared to make the case to the American people.
So first you kind of go, what is
Where's
he?
Lehman?
Right.
Yeah, well, he clerked for Chief Justice William Rehnquist, of course, and is close to the court and close to the sort of the network of clerks. Apparently, the rumor is Anthony Kennedy might be the one this summer that decides to step down.
And the Trump administration has sent signals to Mr. Kennedy, Justice Kennedy, that is to say, where, you know, it would be okay for you to step down because we've already lined up 2 potential justices who clerked for you, so your seat would be safe.
Right, which would make it 5-4. And as you also said, this is not an appointment that lasts for the next 4-8 years. This is for a lifetime.
And this is for the balance of the court, because you replace Scalia with Gorsuch, and it's kind of a 1-for-1. You make this replacement, and you change the whole country.
Well, there are also rumors it could be Clarence Thomas, but his wife, Ginny, said, not true, he's not stepping down.
And we know that the wife holds the key to the ultimate decision.
She knows stuff.
Heather, good morning. Got some headlines
to
for
everyone. And good morning to everyone at home. We begin with a bad story, though. This is involving 2 officers. The breaking news in Washington, D.C. Those 2 officers shot on the job just 1 mile from the U.S. Capitol. Now, they were responding to reports of a shooting when more gunfire rang out. Both of those officers were shot, one in the torso, one in the leg. But the good news is they are expected to be okay. That suspect killed in the shootout. And some brand new details in the bizarre murder of Kim Jong-un's half-brother. Police say that the assassins used a highly toxic chemical classified as a weapon of mass destruction. VX nerve agent. It's completely odorless and it's tasteless. Kim Jong-nam was ambushed in an airport in Malaysia by 2 women who used nothing but their bare hands to poison him. And a plane packed with people crash lands and skids down the runway. Look at this. Its landing gear just collapses in the high winds of this heart-pounding moment. I think that you can see it there. Do you see it? Anyway, it comes in, and then all of the moments, there it is, caught on camera. Look. That's from inside, obviously. The propeller grinding on the runway as the pilot tries to touch down. This was in Amsterdam. All 59 people on board evacuated immediately. They are all okay. And as you can see there, that landing, the plane left tilting onto its side there. Can you imagine being inside that? But luckily, they were all okay.
Yeah, just another something you don't want to see when you're looking out the window.
No, definitely not.
Thank you, Heather.
Thank you, Heather. Coming up, are you ready for more of this?
I have thought an awful lot about blowing up the White House.
Oh boy, Madonna and company have something new up their sleeves.
Can hardly wait to hear about that. Plus, the president's money man just laid out his timeline for tax reform. That's Steve Mnuchin right there, the Secretary of Treasury. So when will you see more cash in your pocket? Stu Varney, who's got plenty in his, joins us right now. He's live next on Fox and Friends from New York City.
Good morning, Henry. How are you?
Detective down in Texas. No, he knows just.
Tax reform is our #1 objective. We think it's absolutely critical to getting the economic growth. We need to make sure that the middle income gets a tax cut. We need to make sure that businesses are competitive with the rest of the world. We're going to try to get this done by August. I think that's aggressive, but we're focused on an aggressive timeline.
That was Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin vowing to deliver on one of the president's key campaign promises. But what impact will Americans actually feel on their wallets?
Here to break it down for us is Stuart Varney, host of Varney & Company on the Fox Business Network. Good morning.
Hey, Stuart.
You're going to like it, okay? You're going to like it. Anybody who pays federal income tax will pay less federal income tax and therefore get a bigger paycheck. Because we understand, we haven't got the details yet, but we understand that this new reform package brings in just 3 tax rates for individuals. 12%, 25%, 33%. I can't confirm that. I've not seen the details yet, but it'll be around that level. All 3 rates are lower than the rates you're currently paying. You'll get a boost in your wallet. Now, the obvious question is, when do you get that boost in your wallet?
That's right.
Well, that depends.
Retroactive?
Well, that depends on a lot of things. Do we get the bill signed, sealed, delivered by August? And is it retroactive to January the 1st? That makes a big difference to whether or not you get an immediate increase in your paycheck. Okay? But I'll tell you this. Next April the 15th, you will get, all federal income taxpayers will get a bigger tax refund next year. Because this year, they've been paying the old high rates, which are no longer in effect, after the tax reform passes, you get a big refund.
So, Stuart, do you
all this? You got this?
We kind of got
I'm going to hold you to that.
I'm an accountant by calling. Yeah.
All we need now, though, is Congress to cooperate. So it was interesting for the administration to say, we're going to hope to get this done by August, because the people up on Capitol Hill, the administration's going to hold their feet to the fire. Hey, you got to do something about Obamacare, and you got to do something about taxes.
It was the key demand from Trump voters: get the economy going, grow the economy, let's return to prosperity. That's why people voted for Trump, and they voted for Trump because he said, I can do it. I'll cut taxes and cut regulation. I'll grow the economy. He said he was going to do it. Now he's got to deliver. And the Mnuchin, the Treasury Secretary, says August will deliver.
And you're going to need Congress, obviously, to do it with them.
Yes.
Not
bang
an
some
easy
heads.
job.
Yeah. You're going to have to do that. You're going to have to bang heads.
All right, Stu, we're going to hold you to that. More money in all of our wallets.
And bang heads, yes.
Guaranteed.
We can do 3 hours on television every day.
All right. Stuart, we'll be watching you over on the Fox Business.
Thanks so much, everyone. Thank you.
Next up, our rundown here in the Fox News Channel. President Trump threatened to send the feds to Chicago to help with the trouble out there. Well, maybe now is the time.
And will America's veterans finally see change at the VA? I think the larger question here is, why do veterans feel like they have to fight the VA? More on this interview. I took your questions to the new man in charge. His answers from viewer emails. Next.
All right, we got some quick Friday morning headlines for you right now. Nearly 2,000 tips have poured in after police have released the video of the man who murdered 2 teenage girls. Officers in the state of Indiana believe Liberty German courageously recorded the assailant as he demanded she and Abigail Williams move down a hill.
Downhill. Downhill. Downhill.
That from cell phone audio. The girls vanished during a hike just last week. And a grim new milestone for the city of Chicago. Wednesday, the deadliest day of shooting this year. 7 people shot, including a pregnant woman. Homicides in the Windy City now at 99 just this year, since January 1st, already outpacing last year's record number. The president reacting to the deadly day, tweeting, "What is going on there? Totally out of control. Chicago needs help."
All right, well, just 2 weeks on the job, new VA Secretary Dr. David Shulkin is tasked with cleaning up one of the country's biggest bureaucracies.
Hundreds of you emailed us with your questions for Pete to ask the secretary, and you asked a bunch of them.
That's right. Hundreds of questions is an understatement, because this is just a small fraction of what we got. Just asking one time.
Sure.
Hey, vets, military families, Americans, what are your questions for this new VA secretary so that we can ask him?
It just shows how much people care.
No, they poured in. People care. Our viewership here really cares. So we took a good number of them and gave them to the VA secretary. Here it is. So the first one is from Thomas Morosky, and he said this. He said, I'm a U.S. Marine who served from 1967 to 1970 with 25 months, you know, 3 tours in Vietnam. I live within 40 miles of a VA clinic, so if I need anything other than blood or urine tests, I need to travel 140 miles to the VA hospital in Minneapolis, Minnesota. My question is, are you planning on fixing the VA so vets like me can go to our local civilian doctors and hospitals?
Yeah. Well, first of all, glad to hear from Thomas, and Thomas, thank you for your service. We do need to do better, and asking people to drive 140 miles to get simple tests isn't a system that's designed to meet the veterans' needs. So yes, Thomas, we are looking at different ways to expand the types of options and choice to be able to use care in the community. We think that's really important. And we're looking at different ways of delivering care, particularly for younger people who say, I may not want to go different places. I may want to get the care right where I am on my phone, on my computer.
Scott asked this question. He said, I served my country as a U.S. Navy radio man, a submariner on the USS Alaska. My question is simple. Why is it that if you make more than $30,000 a year or a certain threshold of income, you're not eligible for medical benefits?
There is a category that are veterans that were not service-connected and make more money than a minimum threshold that we do serve. But we use our resources as wisely as we can to try to serve in that order. And somebody like Scott may be falling outside of that. And so what we're trying to do is design an efficient system so we're able to spread the resources that we have to as many veterans as possible.
Interesting. Okay. Shannon asked this question. He said, I'm an oncology nurse who saw my sister die from poor care from the VA. My brother was found to have liver cancer 2 years ago, and at first he told the VA told him to plan his funeral. They haven't even done a biopsy. He threatened to go to the news or his congressman, which miraculously led him to getting surgery and being free of liver cancer. I think the larger question here is, why do veterans feel like they have to fight the VA, fight the bureaucracy to get served, as opposed to feel like they're being served by it?
Well, I obviously want a system that's responsive to the veterans, that the veteran feels like they are getting everything that they do deserve.
But too often it takes a congressman or a news story or someone really fighting back as opposed to feeling like they're a customer and being served.
Yeah. We want a system where everybody feels like they're being served. It's a very, very big system. And in those cases that people aren't feeling like they're being served, I'm very, very glad that they have advocates. They're often family members, friends, caregivers.
Sure, man. And we hear that in this stack of paper. So many of these people are the advocates themselves, not necessarily the veterans who are just as passionate as the veteran are about their care. A final question here from a viewer is, more than 40% of veterans live and work in small and rural areas. Travel to VA clinics is often so far from family and work that these vets forego needed care. Why not allow access to VA healthcare records and credential local providers to provide care to veterans near where they live and work?
Well, let's go back to the crisis that happened in April 2014, the wait time crisis. And Congress stepped up with a plan called the Choice Program. They designed it, a very well-intentioned plan, by saying that you needed to live either 40 miles away from a VA or have a wait time of 30 days. And what I've said to Congress, and I've been very clear, is if I were designing a system, it wouldn't be based upon 40 miles or 30 days. So our job is now to come back and to say, we think we can design the system better that's going to meet the needs of veterans in a better way, and that's what we're committed to doing, is to changing the system to be more responsive to veterans.
A lot of people have a lot of questions.
They do.
And a lot of family members. I love that point. It's not just our military, but the people that love them so much.
And I handed him the stack and I said, these aren't mine anymore. These are yours. You know, these are yours problems to solve. And so we're all rooting for him and hoping he does, but they're going to have to be aggressive and fight.
Well
so
done,
he's an agent of change at the top.
Yeah.
But what about under him, the people who actually do the work?
Hundreds of people that will report to him, that some of which he can bring in, some of which are permanent employees. That's the first layer of the swamp you have to deal with to get to the place where you're really managing the process and changing the way that vets interact, whether they have real choice in the private sector and people are really held accountable at the end of the day.
And a lot of those people are the same.
Of course, and a lot of those people are protected by government unions, and that's why it's so difficult to change things sometimes.
Well, our prayers are with them.
Yeah, we're hoping for the best.
So. Good luck,
we need to get it right.
Yep.
All right, it's 6:30 now here in New York City. Protesters out in force as our new Secretary of State and Homeland Security arrived in Mexico City, or were they?
Ahead of their visit, a replica of the president's proposed border wall burned in Veracruz.
Trump administration tries to defuse a standoff with Mexico.
Well, we just found out who was behind those visual protests, and it wasn't the Mexican people. Nope. The former spokesperson for the Obama State Department, Marie Harf, is going to react. Coming up next.
And pot states are now on notice. More on the cannabis crackdown coming from the White House.
Tell me what in the world you doing there, L-O-N-E. Yeah, I say, hey, good L-O-O-K-I-N-G. Yeah, I spell T-R-O-U-B-L-E.
I think if you look at the lines of work, I kind of break it out into three verticals or three buckets. The first is kind of national security and sovereignty, and that's your intelligence, the Defense Department, Homeland Security. The second line of work is what I refer to as economic nationalism, and that is Wilbur Ross at Commerce, Steve Mnuchin at Treasury, Lighthizer at Trade, Peter Navarro, Stephen Miller, these people that are rethinking how we're going to reconstruct our trade arrangements around the world. The third, broadly, line of work is what is deconstruction of the administrative state.
That is Steve Bannon, the chief strategist for the White House yesterday at CPAC, talking about the three buckets, one of which is national security and sovereignty as he defined it.
Coming out of the shadows.
That's right.
First time we've really seen him.
He didn't sound like Darth Vader. He's an actual human being. plenty nice and kind. He came to speak to the audience there. Speaking of somebody else who we are welcoming this morning is Marie Harf, who's a Fox News contributor and former State Department spokeswoman. Marie, thanks for being here this morning.
Hey, Marie. Hey, good morning.
So I don't know if you got a chance to see Steve Bannon yesterday, some of his remarks, but at the State Department, you talked about foreign policy and national security every single day. He talked about a reorientation of national security and sovereignty. And does it is it a big change that this administration buckets sovereignty and defense of our borders and who comes and who doesn't into our country as lumps it into national security? And that's certainly a critique of the 8 years of the Obama administration, where they felt like it was more of an open border policy. Did you decouple those two as opposed to the way Trump looks at them right now?
Well, DHS obviously has the lead, along with the Border Patrol, for immigration. So immigration is one of those issues that really straddles domestic and foreign policy. If you look at what Secretary Tillerson was talking about in Mexico this week, a part of that was this new immigration policy. It wasn't as much of a foreign policy issue for the Obama administration as it was a law enforcement issue. And, as a lot of Republicans have pointed out to me in the last few days, President Obama actually deported quite a large number of people as well.
2.5 million, and as you know, he was referred to as the deporter-in-chief. So when you see these headlines about Donald Trump, mass deportation is going to start tomorrow, which, in fact, Tillerson yesterday said there would be no mass deportation. But it does seem like the mainstream media has kind of ginned this up. And there's an atmosphere of fear we are reading, particularly out in Los Angeles, where people are afraid that there's going to be a knock at the door and somebody's going to say, okay, you're going home.
Well, I don't think it's just the media that's creating the fear. I was reading through the new guidance that DHS put out about how these implementation will go on these immigration orders, and I think the challenge now is the Trump administration, in trying to prioritize everyone that's here illegally. I mean, what really happens is you prioritize no one. It's putting people that have committed manslaughter.
Echelon, though, right? I mean, they're still echeloning criminals before everyone.
The bad hombres are going first.
Before it was de facto you were here legally if you weren't at the top of the list. Now they're saying if you're illegal, you're illegal.
Well, I think if you've committed manslaughter, we should put more federal resources into deporting you than if you've maybe committed a traffic crime. And I don't think that we should be putting a lot of federal resources into taking mothers away from children. So there is some fear, I think, because this new executive order has pretty drastically expanded who a priority is for deportation. And just resource-wise, everyone can't be a priority because then no one is.
But where were these protests? Where was the anger all those years that President Obama was deporting? We have the numbers here, over 3 million people. And we've been talking about, yes, criminals, of course, but as part of that 3 million, Marie, there had to have been, I'm sure, mothers, some illegals here that did have incredibly heartbreaking stories that had to leave their families.
I didn't hear those stories.
We didn't hear those then. Well, why is that?
As someone who served in the administration, I can assure you we did hear a lot of criticism from advocates in the community who work on these issues. So we did hear some of that. But I think one of the reasons you hear a lot more concern now is the rhetoric that's being used. Secretary Tillerson and Kelly are saying a lot of the right things. The problem is when President Trump then refers to this as a military operation, that does sound scary and concerning to a lot of people. It certainly does to me.
Well, I think it was clarified later by Sean Spicer, who was using that as an adjective. Remember, he went to a military.
That's not exactly believable.
He went to a military school. He was talking about with military precision. But we're not going to argue.
Then he should say that, right?
Well, it was listen, how many times during the Obama administration did somebody have to go out and clarify things? We're not bringing that up. But you did mention Rex Tillerson down in Mexico. We did see images of protests outside the embassy there. As it turns out, even though you might, in watching television, think, wow, look, the Mexican people are really steamed. Turns out that was a group, Democrats abroad, organized by the Democratic Party here in the United States.
I saw some of those reports, and I have no idea if, how true those are, how many people were actually organized by Democrats abroad. But I think the bigger point, rather than those protests, is the fact that I've heard from a lot of people still in the administration that the Mexican government is pretty concerned about what's going on. And that's a relationship that needs to be a strong one. I think Tillerson and Kelly went down there as pretty much a cleanup operation for some of what President Trump has said. So it's hard for some of these countries who respond to something President Trump tweets, then they hear from a cabinet secretary who maybe has a more reassuring message, and it's not really clear who they should believe or who's actually speaking for the president.
Yeah, and Mexico certainly has its own politics at play here as well. Marie, we're going to have you back on, and you're going to make your awesome pulled pork you were telling us about in the commercial
Cooking
break.
with friends.
Yeah, we love it.
I'm happy to. I'd love to.
Good to have you here this morning.
Appreciate it. Thank you. All right, it's 20 minutes before the top of the hour on this Friday, and Heather Childers is joining us this morning with the news.
Hey, Heather. Good morning. Hello. We have a follow-up to a story that we brought you yesterday. Remember this police officer who fired his gun in front of a group of teenagers? He's now getting backup from his police union.
Oh, hey, watch out, you're the kid.
Here's what you're looking at. This cell phone video showing the LAPD officer shoot at the ground after teenagers walked across his property. Well, his police union claims that the officer needed to defend himself. Anaheim police say that there's not enough evidence to charge the officer. He is now on administrative leave pending an internal investigation. And they rallied in the streets and made threats against the president at the Women's March.
Yes, I have thought an awful lot about blowing up the White House.
And now those same people are finalizing plans for a day without women. They want supporters all around the country to take the day off on March 8th, wear red clothes, and exclusively shop at small women and minority-owned businesses. Earlier this month, protesters staged a day without immigrants. You'll remember that. Dozens lost their jobs. And the White House putting pot-approving states on notice. The Trump administration says expect the Justice Department to crack down on states that allow recreational marijuana. It's an about-face move from the Obama stance since they said that the federal government would not interfere in states where it's legal. Now, voters in 8 states and D.C. have legalized marijuana. And that's a look at the news we're following.